Welcome to the Healing Empath. Welcome to all my empaths and all my empaths that don't know you're an empath just yet. Welcome. I am the Healing Empath, and before we get into today's topic, you can follow me on my quote page at I am the Healing Empath on Instagram. I'm not on any other social media platform just yet. I'm on YouTube and then on Instagram. Instagram is just my quote page. So if you're on Instagram and you want to, share some quotes, or if there's any quotes that I share that relate to you and you want to share it, be more than welcome to go there and follow me and support. Okay, so today's topic is going to be a part 1 of 4 series. It is called Struggles Empaths Face, and part 1 is the family edition. And I think I'm going to title it The Challenges Empaths Face and How to Protect Your Energy. And then we'll discuss some things that, empaths are, go through in a family dynamic. I may not dive deep into all of it because these are going to be short videos. So just bear with me. This is some of the things that, some of the struggles that empaths face. It's not all of the struggles. And I'm going to also at the end give you some tips on how to protect your energy. Okay, let's get into it. Have you ever felt like you were carrying the emotional weight of your entire family? Like their moods become your responsibility, even as a child? Well, I have most definitely always felt that I was carrying the emotional weight of my mom as a very young girl, maybe from toddler if I can remember. So if you're an empath, especially one who grew up in a chaotic or like dysfunctional household like myself, you probably are going to relate to this video. Again, this is going to be part 1 of my 4-part series on the struggles empaths face. And today we're going to focus on the family dynamic, where many of our empath wounds begin. So before we go into the main part of the video, on my last video, Are You an Empath?, we talked about things that you would know if you're an empath. So here's a quick insight on if you're an empath, or just understanding what an empath is. So empaths are naturally sensitive to the emotions and energies of others. So they're naturally sensitive. So naturally sensitive means you may see someone win that came from a struggle, or maybe they didn't come from a struggle and they've won something, right? That made them extremely happy. Because you're an empath, you are going to feel connected to that emotion, and you are going to feel excited even if they're a stranger for them. It's gonna warm your heart that someone else is winning, and it doesn't even matter if you're winning or losing at the moment in life, or if you have your ups and downs. You're still going to feel that emotion because you feel what they feel. But when you're raised in like a dysfunctional home, or a home that carries a lot of trauma filled, that sensitivity becomes a survival tool. It's not a gift any longer, because being an empath is a gift, but it's not a gift once it becomes that survival tool. And what that really means is just that you start to absorb the energy of others, and not because you're gifted, not because of the abilities that you may have, like psychic abilities, clairsentience. I have those abilities, as I stated in my other previous video, but it has nothing to do with how I became an empath. And honestly, in the beginning, I've always thought that empath and psychic were connected. And it is a form of being psychic, like clairsentience, right? Because you feel everything, but it didn't come from, a gift that you had since you were brought into this world. This was more brought on to you by some type of trauma. Okay, so as I stated, you start to absorb energy, and it's not because you're gifted, but because you're open and you never learned how to create the boundaries. And you also are trying to stay safe. So you kind of like get in tune with your environment. And depending on what you may be going through in that environment, you utilize what you feel on how to maneuver and feel safe in your environment, if that makes sense. Okay? So I don't know if I can, maybe I should elaborate a little bit on that. So for example, if you have a parent, if your dad is, comes home and he just throws off the energy in the home, and he makes you feel like you have to be responsible because he had a bad day at work. But he doesn't say, hey kid, you need to be responsible for my bad day. He just portrays, exudes the energy with complaining, slamming things down, making you feel jittery and jumpy and on eggshells. So an empath person will try to have everything ready because they're afraid that that parent will be upset with them if they're not. So like maybe their food heated up or whatever the father wants, or maybe his favorite show or the remote is accessible to him, or whatever it is that the father complains about, or the kid understands what his energy is like. That child is going to try to create an environment before the father gets home, so the father doesn't, maybe hit them or yell and scream at them, or just have that weird energy to make everyone uncomfortable. An empath person will spot that, and they will try to, fix it, fix it in their own way, even if they're a kid. Okay? So today, I want to explore, why do unhealthy empaths feel responsible for their family's emotions? Okay, I've always felt responsible. This is very personal for me. It's a very personal question for me. Again, I wasn't born an empath. I became one through the trauma. Okay, I wasn't born one. 9 times out of 10, none of us are born empaths. I became one through trauma. Now, if we're talking about psychic gifts or clairsentience, telepathy, mediumship, clairvoyance, and all the gifts that one can have, yes, I was born with those gifts. Okay? And even with those gifts, they have to be worked on as you grow so they can get heightened. And I'm not going to talk too much about that here because that's not the topic. But I will delve on empath and being psychic or having psychic gifts down the line. Okay, but the empath side of me, so the one who absorbed everyone's pain. And when I say everyone, for me, it is my mother. That came from growing up in a dysfunctional home. My mother, she struggled with an undiagnosed bipolar disorder. She's still alive, thank God. But she would scream at me for hours and sometimes all day. And I was just a little girl. I'm talking about from toddler to adult, even up until my 30s maybe. And then, she didn't scream at me the way she did as a child, teenager, and young adult in my 30s, but she still gave me that energy. And anyway, that's another topic. But I did discover in my 30s that I was abused. I didn't realize I was abused prior to that. I just thought it was part of the struggle that me and a lot of other people went through in my community. But nobody was quite like my mother, I would have to say, when I look back at it. So she screamed at me for hours, sometimes all day, for the silliest, the smallest things. I was just a kid. And then she would always come back and apologize. She always showed, that she was sorry. And that's really just the repetitive nature of what would happen in my family. With my mother. She would scream and yell at me and then apologize. And it was just like, that was the pattern. And what she would do with the undiagnosed bipolar, she'd just tell me about her pain, her childhood, and how her father talked bad about her, and how she didn't like her facial features. And I guess, that was contributed from her dad, because when you look at your father and he's insulting you and saying all these things, and then people say you look like him, and maybe you don't feel the best because it's like, I don't want to look like that man, But I listened. I felt bad for my mother. I felt very bad for her. I was listening to her. I was only 8 years old, 7 years old, 6 years old, listening to her. She would yell and scream at me, and then she'll start talking about that a lot of the times. So I forgave her because she apologized. I forgave her over and over again, even when she hurt me, because I thought, well, she's hurting, so maybe if I can just make her feel better and be quiet or not say anything, that, she'll love me. Or maybe if she knows that I'm her support, So I became emotionally mature, just way too young, about those type of things that really most kids aren't going through, Most kids don't feel like that, that's not even a thought for a child at that age that I was. I even gave my mother advice. I tried to give her advice. I tried to calm her down. And when I'm saying this, guys, I'm not saying this like to bash my mother or to put her out there. I'm just talking about how I became an empath and the truth of the matter. Again, I tried to always calm her down and give her advice, but I was just way too young. I remember being 8, 9 years old, 7, and I stayed quiet a lot of the time so I wouldn't trigger her, because I didn't want her to be mad at me. I didn't want her to yell. I thought that I had to help. I felt responsible pretty much for her feelings. I felt responsible. And that is really not healthy empathy. Really, that's enmeshment. And so fast forward when my mother and my stepfather, who she's known since childhood, when they got together, I was about 6 years old, and he moved in from like when I was 6 to like 10, and he was off and on living with us. But there were a lot of fights with my stepdad. I was the only child, and he had a daughter. She didn't live with us, but in my home, they would be constantly fighting. Not just yelling and screaming. Fist fights. It was just like insane, just the type of fighting they were doing. There was times the house felt like a war zone. Screaming, the fist fights, just things being broken, yelling. Me catching him beat on my mother, and I'm just frozen. And a lot of the fights they would get into, well, it would be because he would insult me. He would never come to me. Later on in life, he's insulted me. But when I was a child, he would never come to me and insult me and say, hey, you're this and that. He would just insult me to my mother. He would insult me to my mother, and that's where the fighting would start. And call me names, and again, this led to them having severe fights, like really, really bad fights. And my mom would blame me for things that I didn't do as well. Like, for example, if there was a penny on the floor in a corner of a crevice of a wall, and I walked by that penny, you can forget about it. You can forget about it. You would think that I have did the worst thing a child can do is walk past something that I didn't see on the floor that she says that I saw, and I purposefully walked past it. And those are the things that, I had to go through as a child, where I always felt like she thought I was doing things on purpose. And I'm like, maybe I was, maybe I glanced, maybe it looked like I saw it from her angle, but I didn't see it. I'm only a kid, and then I started questioning myself too, like, am I doing something on purpose? And I know I wasn't, but you're a kid, So, really, I spent my whole life just wanting to prove that I was a good girl, and that I wasn't trying to make her mad, and that I wasn't trying to do anything on purpose. So I took on that role of a peacemaker, and also the people pleaser. So I would find myself trying to help when her and my stepfather would argue. I would try to stop their arguments or say things to them to make sense. But I'm just a kid. But I felt like I had to. And I felt like I had to be... I didn't realize I was a people pleaser. Well, she told me I was when I was 8, because she said I would give things away. But now that I'm 45 years old, I understand that she created me to be a people pleaser with her. And that is how it starts. But again, I felt like I had to, because when she was mad, I was scared. When she cried and had her moments, I felt very hurtful and sad for my mother. I didn't want her to be sad. I just wanted a mom who was calm, who saw me, a mother who didn't feel like I was a burden, and a mom who thought that I was special on a consistent basis. That's what you want when you're a child. You want your parent to love you. You don't want to feel like you're a burden. And again, with this content, because it's going to be shorter videos, I'm going to get into everything of my childhood. So you can understand how I became an empath and why I'm healing as an empath. So I'm always going to be an empath, but I don't want to be an unhealthy empath anymore, because what it attracted in my life from that was just not people that were good for me and good for my soul. But that's just a whole nother topic. Okay, so when I look back, I realized that at my age, when I look back, I realized that I wasn't responsible for my mother's emotions, that I literally was just a child, but no one told me that. There was no, and I don't know if anyone comes from a black household in America, but back then, especially in the 80s and 90s, mental health was not really talked about like how it is now. Like when you go on social media and you go on the internet, you can type anything, and there's a slew of information about mental health. There's just so much information on every kind of mental health issue that there can be. And that wasn't then. I didn't know anything about that at 16, 15, 17, 18 years old, and therapy, forget about it. Therapy wasn't something that we had access to. Not saying that it wasn't there in the 80s and 90s, because I'm sure it was, but in my community, in the urban quote-unquote community, or what some people say, the hood communities, right? The neighborhoods, you survived the best way you could. You ate that up. You ate being screamed at, or getting whooped on in front of your friends, or getting yelled at and embarrassed in front of your friends. That was kind of like the norm, from even different people that I've known and grew up around. Okay, so that's how pretty much it started. That's how, that's the clean version of my life and how it started, without nitpicking every situation that I've occurred. And that's not just how an empath was born from me, or me being that empath, but that's really how many empaths are born. They're not born from peace, guys. They're born from survival. unless you're a healthy empath. If you're a healthy empath, you were not brought into this as a survival tactic. Okay? If you are an empath, most likely, if you're unhealthy, it came from trauma, or it came from a loss in your family, or both. So until we realize that, right? Until we realize that becoming an empath came from trauma, came from abuse, came from survival, then we stay trapped in patterns of guilt, self-abandonment, overgiving, people-pleasing, and the list goes on. Right? Being a peacemaker. Sometimes, or feeling guilty for defending yourself. Or what about saying yes all the time? I had a big problem with saying yes. A big problem, because I always said yes, even if I didn't want to do it. And then sometimes if I knew I wasn't going to do something, I would say yes, and then I would ghost. And it would be for simple things. Like if someone said, hey, you want to go out? And I'm like, okay. And I don't really want to go out. Or if I sound like I don't, and they try to convince me, and I'd be like, fine, I'll go. But really, I know when I hang up, I'm not in a mood to go out. I would 9 times out of 10 let them get to my house, and I would never answer. And it would be because I didn't really want to go. But again, I had a hard time saying, no, I'm not going to do that tonight. And, when I look back, I'm like, that was so wrong. Why would I not tell this person no? They kept pressing me to go, but I don't really want to go. Because, we always have fun together, but I don't want to go. So instead of me saying, hey, no, I'm really not going to go out and press them back, I would just say yeah, and they would come, and then I wouldn't answer. And they were still my friend because, I wasn't malicious about it. It was just I didn't know how to say no very well until later on, until I had my daughter. So this is just some of the things that some of the struggles that empaths face in the family dynamic. This is some. This is what I face. I face it with my mother mainly. My father was not really present in my life as a child. His mother was, she helped take care of the responsibility with my mother, and then my mother's mother also helped, but my father just wasn't around. So, but when he did come around, he would always want to put some sort of dominance there. It was never to build an emotional connection. It was more dominating. Oh, read the dictionary from A all the way to Z. Do things like that. But he wasn't on top of me to be consistent and to go back and forth with me with words. It was just demanding these things, but no direction on how to stay consistent. So it was a lot of that with my father. And that also drove, fast forward to where me and him are not really speaking at this moment. And I don't even know if I'll ever probably speak to him, because again, as I'm healing, I had to do some boundary checks in my life. And it started in my late 20s. Fast forward to now, I have a very strong boundaries that I placed for myself, and I just won't break them. They're non-negotiables. Okay, so let's just do a recap on what you may struggle with as an empath in your family dynamic. So some of you may struggle, like I have, with overgiving for acceptance and feeling loved. So you're overgiving everything because you want to feel loved. You want to be accepted by your mother, by your father, by your siblings, by your grandparents, by your guardians, even if they're adopted, whoever it is. You just want to feel loved. So you're just an overgiver, and you really get any of that energy back. Or how about the hero syndrome? I had that as well. When you're trying to save the day because you sense that your mom or your dad or any family member is upset or angry, and it has nothing to do with you, but you will do anything helpful to avoid them from having a meltdown. Because when they have a meltdown, you have an internal meltdown. Right? Or you might intervene in your parents' conflicts. And I'm not saying like a regular argument. I mean like these outbursts of rage and abuse, and you may try to intervene and reason with them to stop them and to mediate the situation, but you're just too young to do such a thing. Or it's not your place. You've become this Oprah influence or Iyanla influence in your family, but you are not even old enough mentally. You have your emotional capacity has not been developed properly for you to even do that. So it just wears on you and drains your energy, drains you right out. Before you even get out into the world, you're being drained. Or people pleasing, wanting their approval and validation. Have that too. I had that too. And guilt for issues that have nothing to do with you. Things that happened with my mother in the past, I would somehow end up feeling guilty for because I felt bad. I felt sad. I don't know. I just would feel guilty. And support. So you trying to support them with topics and things that have nothing to do with you. Like you're making every problem that they have your own problem. And that's really what some of the struggles that empaths go through in a family dynamic. So if you are watching this and it resonates, I really want you to know that you are not alone. You are not crazy. You are definitely not broken. And you are just someone who learned to feel too much too soon. So one of the things that I want you to understand or learn from is how to protect your energy. To be an empath who heals, but not one who bleeds. So protecting your energy, what you're going to have to do is assess the environment. Are you living with the people in your family that are giving you and causing you all this pain, and you're doing all these things because you want to appease them, because you don't want any problems with them? You want to be loved. You want to be accepted. You want to be a good person. You want to love your family. You want to love your mom or dad. Are you feeling like you're in that environment? If you're in that environment and you have no way out, meaning that you don't have a job, maybe, I don't know if you're old enough, you should be 18 if you're watching this. But if you're not, then you would have to do your very best to talk to someone that you trust in your family, to see if you can get some therapy, and to see if you can get some help in your family. So if you are old enough and you're in your family dynamic, the first thing I would say to do is have a plan for release. So, go take a walk, hang out with your friends. If you can, stay out the house and keep yourself as busy as much as you can. Whether if you're working, I'm not saying get a second job if you're not in school, or if you're working, pick up some extra hours. Make a plan financially for yourself so you can remove yourself from that situation. That's the first thing you need to do. If you're not interested in cutting off your family members, then I would suggest loving them and putting a strong boundary from a distance. So if you know their energy and being around them is going to cause you to have stress and anxiety, then you plan your visits. You plan exactly when you want to be around them and how much you can take. And if it's a half an hour, time it, and then make up something and leave once you get out their energy and their space. So those are the first things I would do. Me personally, at my age, I completely cut off contact with my stepfather, cut off contact. I didn't really cut off contact with my mom, but she decided to stay away, being that I cut off contact with him. And then again, like I said, with my father, I cut contact as well. And it's been some years with my mother, since around 2018, I would say, was the last time that I've seen my mother. And we don't live far from each other. But this is her choice. And I realized later on that this is the best choice. And now, I'm glad this happened. From going back in my childhood, I should have been not having a relationship with my mother many, many years ago. Okay? So a lot of us, we love our parents and we don't want to, I want us to be very close to my mom. But not every parent wants that. And it may sound odd. I'm a mom now. It may sound odd to some, but it is very true. And what I notice too, sometimes people that have good relationships with their parents, or they accept their parents' toxic behavior, they have a problem with cutting off their parents 100%. I don't. I believe that sometimes your parents were a vessel and that there was a purpose for you to live, and you had to come through that canal in order to be here. But it doesn't mean you have to maintain a relationship with someone that is abusive towards you, that treats you poorly. It's just you're beating yourself up every day and allowing yourself to be abused by your family because you're too afraid to cut them off because you think it's going to be bad. God does not want us to be abused, and it doesn't matter if the person or people are your relatives or your parents, your sisters, your cousins, your father. It doesn't matter. You have to protect yourself. But I'm not telling you to cut off your mom or dad or whoever. I'm telling you to make the assessment, to make a boundary, to make a plan. If you want to cut them off, more power to you. Then to me, that's the best way if they're super toxic. But if you feel like, the parent isn't that bad and they don't make you feel with anxiety or stress or depressed or any of those things, or drain you and drain your cup and, ruin your entire energy, then you would make that plan and you would make that boundary. And you don't want to stay at mom's house for more than 30 minutes or 2 hours before you have to get out of there because something's going to go wrong. Or your sister or your father, whoever it is. So just make the boundary. There's no way to play in between. Like there's no in and out like a jump rope. There's no in and out. You have to make the decision if you want your life, if you want to be happy, if you don't want to be depressed anymore, if you want to have healthy relationships outside of your family dynamic. You have to start with the family dynamic, because the family dynamic is the reason why your relationships on the outside of that isn't good, because energy attracts, right? So in your DNA, if you've been abused, it's in your DNA at this point, because your DNA has been imprinted on when you've been abused as a small child. And remember, your brain isn't fully at full capacity until 26 years old. So if you've been abused from 6, 7, 4, 2, 3, 1 months, 7, 8, 9, 10, that's embedded in you. And you have to literally detox that out of your body. So going to the gym, acupuncture, a spiritual class, if you go to church, if you're religious, if you're Christian, or if you're, a Muslim, whatever your beliefs are, you go to your religious practices or your spiritual practices, meditation, acupuncture, watching lots of videos like this or any other videos out there that can give you insight and give you motivation and give you transformational stories and things that maybe you can relate to. YouTube University is the best place when you have issues that you really don't know how to deal with, because somebody out there has experienced exactly what you've experienced or worse. So remember, you are not broken, you are not crazy, you are not alone, you are not a people pleaser, you are not weak, You're a kind soul that just feels everything. And we are going to learn how to heal that together, that we're not so open to all these energies and attracting all these people and energy vampires and all these people that come in, these narcissists that come in because we're so wide open. We so want to be that cat in Shrek. You know, before the cat started attacking, the cat would have those little sad eyes with the tears, but they turned around and whipped out the sword because that was just to disarm their enemy, just so they can say, oh, the cat is so cute, what happened? But right before we get into that sword stance, we are the cat, and we are literally walking with the tears and just this kind soul to these other entities out there that see us. They look at us as if we're these weak, sweet, cute, kind beings that will heal them. And that's really how an empath gets depleted and is unable to function correctly. So if you're an empath, you're watching this video, and you're still in the family dynamic, my suggestion to you is to make a boundary, make a plan to exit out of that plan, whether that's picking up extra hours at your job, whether that's working, getting 2 jobs, whatever you need to do, you have to leave out. You have to leave out of that environment so you can be the best version of yourself, so you can heal. And if you have a family one day, they won't have to heal with you. You can teach them how to be empathic without being drained and abused in any way. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I went over the time that I was supposed to, but the good thing is there is going to be a part 2, 3, and 4, and I'm going to talk about friendships, the struggles that empaths face in friendships. That is coming up next. And again, in the future, if you didn't hear everything that you needed to hear from this family dynamic video, I am going to do further content that dives deeper into the family dynamic and the darker side of the struggles that empaths face in the family. And then I'll go back and do the rest of the topics as well. And don't forget to follow me at I Am The Healing Empath on Instagram. And please like and subscribe. And I hope everyone has an amazing, blessed, and beautiful day or night whenever you're watching this.